I'm sure by now you've seen the videos of the new Cybertruck and its heavy-duty steel body panels. Well, I wanted to just compare it to my 1978 F-150. So, first of all, we have my old beat-up Pathfinder right now. I'm just going to do one quick punch. Now, I don't actually want to dent the body panel, but you can see it moves a lot. So the entire body panel of this truck is just extremely thick, solid steel. I don't think I can really get that across on camera, how rigid this entire body is. Now on the inside of the truck, you can see there's no airbag, and the only protection you have against concussion against this steel dash, literally a steel dash, the same metal as the body, is this little thin piece of foam up here going across the dash. Now, also, there's no headrests, and it's just all steel. All steel. Steel, look, the paint wore off, it's steel. So, it's really nuts just how heavy and just completely overkill these old things are. And the amazing part is, this has a 4.9 liter inline six that makes 100 horsepower and 250 foot-pounds of torque before 1200 RPM. That 100 horsepower, yeah, it does that before its red line of 3000 RPM, and it still gets 18 miles per gallon. So doing a quick cold start for people who enjoy those, and I'm gonna take this truck on a little drive and tell you about it. I've got my tools in here because I'm currently dailying this as my Pathfinder is broken. Now right off the bat, you'll see 2 speed wipers, slow and fast. That's all you got. You do have hot and cold with, you know, everything in between, air conditioning with a 4-speed fan and AC. Now it doesn't work right now, but it does have it, and it should work pretty well. And right here we have my ZT driving computer that I installed, that old aftermarket junk. This would have an AM/FM stereo because it's the Explorer package, but that has unfortunately been stolen at some point in the past. This is just an old Jag steering wheel, and no, it's not straight. You'll probably see that here in a minute. Now, to start an old truck like this, the first thing you want to do is pump the gas. So in order to pump the gas on an old truck like this, you're actually just going to slowly press the gas pedal. Now you want to do this on almost any carbureted car. Just gently press the gas pedal about 10 times, and that squirts gas into the intake manifold, and that's what basically primes the car, just like a lawnmower. So now after you've done that a little while, you can over pump it, so don't just keep going, but usually about 5 to 10 times is the right number. Now, crank it. Some cars will have a manual choke. This choke is automatic though. So you'll see your oil gauge will start to go up. Temperature gauge and everything should go up. Battery should go up immediately, and then make sure you have fuel. But that's the only thing. The brake light will stay on because the brake switch is out on this. I've got to get that switch fixed. So this has the Shift-matic or Shift-o-matic transmission. No, this has the Select-a-Shift 3-speed C6 automatic transmission. That's why you have first and second gear. So second gear is your traction control. First gear is just for like driving around with heavy loads, and then you just put it in drive for everything else. It's easy to shift, and there's really nothing complicated about that. Right here is your blinker and your steering wheel adjuster. It tilts when you push it in, and then, you know, flashes when it's supposed to. Now right here you have your hazard switch, and then right here you have your windows. That's about all you got. You got your door handle there, and the lock is missing. So that's about all there is to it. Now this is only a 50,000, 99,000 mile odometer. So who knows if this has 150,000, 250,000? We have no idea, but it's definitely not 50,000 miles. So inside you have a lot of steel, a little tray for all your junk. Inside you have a lot of steel, a little tray for all your junk, and a cardboard headliner, which looks nice and is hiding the asbestos, so don't touch it too much. And right here you have your air conditioning, which whistles, so I jammed a piece of cardboard under it to keep it quiet. Now you'll notice right off the bat, everything in here is rattling. I'll get that fixed eventually, but add it to the list. So the truck itself is pretty quiet. The inline six, even with a straight pipe, is not a loud engine because of just very low RPMs and very mild cam and very small carburetor and everything that it has. It's not a high performance engine. It was just made to work. As I said, this was an Explorer, and you might be thinking, well, Everett, that doesn't look like an SUV. In 1978, this was actually an F-150 Ranger Explorer. So, yeah, it's a bit mixed up. But yeah, those were just packages, and the Explorer package came with the nice coloring. It's white with green pinstripes, air conditioning, heating, AC, power brakes, power steering, and tinted windows, I believe. So driving this truck, you realize right away that the engine just really drives weird. It has so much instant torque, it reminds me of like an electric car, except you just run out of power immediately because it only makes 100 horsepower. So the 3-speed automatic shifts very smoothly. It does exactly what you would expect it to do. You go into first whenever you take off. It quickly shifts into second. First, second, and third, right there. And that's your driving gear. You spend almost the entire time driving this truck in third gear. So that will get you all the way up to about 90 miles per hour, which is your red line. So yeah, you're not going to be going anywhere too fast, but it's just made to work. Now, it's not actually that slow. I keep up with traffic just fine, even in the city, because it gets out of stoplights really fast. And you know, up till about 65, you get 18 miles a gallon. Once you get to 70, you're getting 14 miles a gallon. So it's not worth trying to drive fast in this thing. You won't get anywhere without burning tons of gas. So this does have power brakes, as I mentioned, but the brake booster itself is a vacuum actuated, as you would expect. That's very small and just does not give you much assistance. So by the time you're starting to, you know, get a decent amount of brake pressure built up, you would have had most cars' brakes completely locked up. This truck and all of these older Fords with the twin I-beam suspension handle extremely well, and they're very flat and square. So you barely get any body roll, and you're very unlikely to actually roll one of these. They just slide because of the small tires. So a lot of people ended up putting wider tires, but that makes them dangerous. So you don't really want to go anything wider than a 10-inch wide tire. As you can see right up there on the hood, there's a little silver nub. This would have had a hood ornament, and it would be a little bitty rectangular badge that illuminates and says Explorer on it. Another thing I'm trying to find so I can replace that eventually. So the wind noise in this truck is actually fairly minimal. You mostly get it from anything that doesn't fit quite right, like these windows or the door sills if you don't have the door latches adjusted correctly. Aside from that, it's really quiet. And if you have just the main window down and not this open, then most of the wind goes around it due to the extremely vertical windshield and recessed window sills from the actual door panel. So you get barely any wind in the cabin, and it's very nice to drive this thing with the windows down. As you can see, it takes off pretty well all the way up to 30 miles an hour, and it's really, you know, you can't drive fast. This is almost like, it's pretty much as fast as you can accelerate, but it does that effortlessly, so it's super weird. Obviously there is no traction control, and the instant torque of that 300 combined with the low first gear means you're very quickly spinning these little like 7.5 or 8-inch wide tires it has on it. So you just drive gently. Now this has single pot front disc brakes, not drums. It has drums in the rear, obviously. Now the single pot front brakes will lock up these tires, which I think is a testament to how small and badly these tires need to be upgraded. Even on a rainy day, if you stab these brakes, you'll lock up, and with this heavy truck, you'll slide for a long time. I've done that before just to see what it would do, and it's kind of fun because you just keep sliding, just like you're driving on ice. So as far as the steering goes, it's hydraulic, exactly what you would find in a tractor. It's literally just a PTO pump. So you have absolutely no steering feel, and you don't really have any quick, like, sensitive movements. It just takes its time about it, and it's really, really weird to drive, and it's completely impossible to do any kind of stupid stuff in. So it's a great starter car, unless you want to, children to, you know, survive driving this thing. So the ride is pretty rough, but driving this without front shocks actually makes it a lot smoother and really doesn't make them any less stable if you're driving like a normal person. But if you like to take corners hard, then your front wheels will start to hop and you lose grip pretty quickly. But the front suspension on these are designed well enough that a lot of them, like I'm talking most of these twin I-beam Fords I see, the shocks are out on them. Like they do not work, they've leaked all the oil out, they're sitting there just bouncing around, and the owner never notices. They just don't notice because these are meant to be driven like a farm truck, and they just are really smooth and stable. It works extremely well considering this has no sway bar or anything. They just are really nice and handle really well. I don't know how Ford stumbled across the perfect geometry for these things, but in my opinion, these ride just as well as a modern truck. The sound of the inline-six engine sounds a lot like maybe a Boxer 4-cylinder with a CVT, kind of like what's in a Subaru. The transmission shifts so mildly and softly, even though it's freshly rebuilt and power tuned. It just shifts very nicely, and the torque converter ends up doing most of the work. So it sounds like you're driving a CVT. The engine just kind of stays at one constant load, but also you're driving between 1200 and 3000 RPM most of the time. You know, never really ever getting to 1200 or 3000 RPM. So it's just super unusual to drive. A big V8, you always have that engine working away and it sounds like it's actually doing something. But this inline-six doesn't. It just sits there and purrs. It's super nice. Overall, the driver comfort of this vehicle is very good, as the seat is spring-loaded itself with lots of padding and very wide, good thigh support and everything. So it's very easy on your back and absorbs any bumps that do make it through the suspension. So it's very good on your back and it's just really nice upright position. You do have very minimal leg room. It drives a lot like a semi-truck if you've ever been in one. You just sit very upright. And the carpet in here is obviously not original. This is just house carpet because the old original stuff has rotted away over the years. So this was put in there about 20 years ago. So driving this truck, you really don't have to mash the gas. You just use a little bit and don't apply it too harshly, as these old C6 transmission use what's called a sprag clutch. A sprag clutch is much like a one-way valve that lets the engine turn the drive shaft, but not the drive shaft turn the engine. So as soon as you apply the power again, it clunks and engages. I'm going to demonstrate that here in just a second. So here we're on the power. I'm going to let off, and then I engage again. There's always a clunk. You can feel it, especially at higher speeds. It's more dramatic. All right, so here we're in third gear. You hear it clunking in and out of gear, and that's the sprag clutch. You obviously don't want to do that too much, but my transmission is still under warranty. So as far as your maneuverability in parking lots, it's long and it's a big square, so you know exactly where all your corners are. You can just see them, and these bumpers are steel, so if you do hit that Civic next to you, you don't really have to worry about it. You can just keep going, and not, like, even if you do scratch the paint, you probably won't notice the paint is already scratched. So from 1973-ish to 1997, Ford pretty much made the exact same style of truck. They were all had very similar dimensions with the cab, engine, frame, suspension, all of that. And because of that, they were all heavy and very primitive from that entire year range. Now that also means that this 4,000-pound truck, they managed to shave off about 600 pounds by the time they discontinued this line of truck. They introduced the 1978 F-150 as sort of a second-gen or facelift F-150. The F-150 originated in 1975 after emissions made the F-100 non-viable. So they just classified it as a larger truck, and that got them by for a few years. So this would originally have had some emission systems such as an EGR, heated carburetor and intake manifold, and a catalytic converter. The catalytic converter on this truck was probably removed the day it was bought. There's no sign of it. Same thing with the EGR. For a while, this thing actually had a dual fuel system where it would be powered by propane. The propane system was added by an old man that I believe just used this as his daily driver, maybe on the farm, I'm not sure. But he racked up quite a few miles on it before he gave it to his grandson. And his grandson planned on making it a hot rod. He put a really horrible dual exhaust system on this and this little racing steering wheel, which I think is cute. I like it. All in all though, this thing is a really surprisingly nice daily driver. If you're not worried about damaging it, which you have to be worried about damaging it because it's a 1978 and you really can't fix it, you know, you can't take it to a shop. You pretty much have to find your parts and do it yourself. The function of this truck is just really astounding for just how well it does and holds up through to modern driving. There is one weird dynamic of the front suspension, and that is it has barely any caster. So your average modern vehicle, and most vehicles, even older ones, have had a lot of caster, which allows the steering wheel to self-center when you turn. It does that somewhat. You can see it kind of straightens out, but then it stops. And that means that the whole time you're driving down the road, anything that affects the wheels affects how this thing goes in line. And so you're constantly having to steer. You always have to steer and keep this wheel moving to keep the center between the lines. It's like trying to drive a broken shopping cart. It's just really road wanders constantly, and it's not the tires, it's not tire pressure, it's just the suspension design. So, you know, do better next time, Ford. So everyone's favorite feature of driving an old classic car like this is you get tons of attention. Everybody wants to ask, you know, what year is your car, what engine does it have in it, and all that. And that's cool, but it's just old men. So these old F-150s have a ton of frame flex, and that's for the entire 73 to 97 that I was talking about. They all have a very narrow and C-channel frame that allows them to just bend like constantly. You can really feel it, which is fun and really nice off-road because it gives you a ton of articulation of the truck, but it does not really allow for great like on-road mannerisms. So you end up just getting a nice cushy but bouncy and kind of random ride that isn't ideal for racing. This wasn't made for racing. Like I've said over and over, this truck was made for working. So people who buy these to hot rod them, you're just doing it wrong. You're buying the wrong vehicle. Alright, just stop. Let these things be how they are. They're awesome just the way they are. So, my overall review and, you know, summary to this video is these old trucks were bought and sent off the floor to work, and they can still work. They do just fine. These are just incredibly well engineered and designed vehicles. So let them be that. Don't try to make them fast. You're not killing one by working it. You're doing what it is made to do, and it'll still get a lot. It'll still last a long time as a work truck. Now, as soon as you start hot rodding it, as soon as you engine swap it, oh yeah, trade out that old junky 300 for a 460. You just ruined it. The 300 is literally one of the best engines ever built. It's indestructible. You know, this thing runs out of gas. Just dump whatever you got in the tank. It's carbureted. It will burn it and it'll run and it won't even knock. All right, if it does, it's a 300. It'll be fine. It has 8-to-1 compression. Like, stop. Just stop. You're killing me. I mean, these trucks are amazing for what they are. Stop trying to make them something they aren't. When I was saying you can put anything you want in the tank, I wasn't even kidding. This, like, you can, anything that will burn, like, just like a lawnmower, you know, anything that's thin enough and flammable enough that you can get through the carb into the cylinder and be lit by a spark plug, it will run on that, I guarantee you. So be careful what you run it on, actually. You can kill one with bad gas or something because you don't even realize that it shouldn't be running on that. Also, the frame bit enough on the truck that the bed actually hit the cab. So don't rump these things either. They're not made for that. They're meant to be driven as farm trucks. So this truck was equipped with these push bars right here. Now those are actually fully functional. As you can see, they're very thick, heavy-duty steel. You can easily push cars and stuff with it, but also they are tapered on the bottom right here and at just the right elevation to push round hay bales. You can literally just push them anywhere you want to go with this truck because they'll just slide along that and keep going. We used it for that a lot, and it's super handy. Just push hay bales around, you know, move them just like a tractor would. This has the Ford 9-inch rear differential. The 9-inch, I believe, is a semi-floater. I can't remember, but it is one of the most durable and reliable and modifiable, bestest axles in the world. You can even modify them to be a full floater if you want to put more power through it. You can buy custom ones that are shortened, widened, reinforced for racing and ramping, drag racing. They can handle over 1,000 horsepower. They are just completely ridiculous rear axles. And this is equipped with literally the forever drivetrain, a Ford 300 C6 auto and that 9-inch rear diff. So unless this thing rusts in half, it's going to keep running, and I just absolutely love that about it. I do have to say though, my transmission's rebuilt. It did not fail on me, but the pump was starting to get clogged up from years of abuse and people not changing the oil in it. So the torque converter was taking forever to build up or to fill up and actually build hydraulic pressure. So I was like, well, I'll just pull it out and have it rebuilt. That was a 2-year nightmare, and I don't recommend it. If your truck runs, leave it alone. The one thing I do not like about this truck for daily driving is the taillights do not have any yellow on them. They're just dual filament, just red. So you got your running light, brake light, and turn signal all on one bulb, and I hate that system. So anytime you turn on your flashes or something, people behind you don't know what you're doing, if you're turning, if you're braking. Now obviously you've got 2 of them, but I just really don't like that system. My Pathfinder has a very bright yellow light on the back, and it's super nice when you're parked on the side of the road or anything. It just tells people, watch out. The rear bumper on this is just a big heavy-duty hunk of steel, which is what you want from a rear bumper, but I'm not sure how somebody bent it. It looks like maybe a tractor loading stuff in and out of it, because we've always done that, used it for hauling gravel or mulch or anything, just scoop it in and out. I'm guessing that's how that happened. I can't imagine otherwise. It's bent and everything. I'll probably just completely replace it eventually, just so it looks nice and pretty, because this is going to be a road truck as long as I own it. I'll use it for work when I have to, but it's going to be a road truck. The exhaust, I'm going to go ahead and modify it slightly. I'm going to put a whole new custom exhaust on it with dual manifolds instead of the single log style manifold, because those will eventually have problems. So the duals should be just a better, more powerful setup and better flow and everything, less stress on the engine. Everything I do to this, I just want to modify it for optimal longevity. And I think I was going to do with the MSD rev limiter ignition, so if somebody doesn't in the future accidentally floor it and over rev that 300 or that 3000 RPM redline and kill it. But I think instead what I'll do is stick with the Ford DuraSpark, because the Ford DuraSpark ignition system is just a very good system, surprisingly. It runs just fine, and it's cheap and easily replaceable. If it goes out, you just have another one behind the seat, throw it in, after 5 minutes you're back on the road. So the MSD is a $400 unit, and it's complicated, and you have to have it sent off and rebuilt if it breaks. It's a whole deal. So I'm going to stick with the Ford DuraSpark. This is my project. This is what my channel will always be about. This is, as long as this truck is alive, and as long as I'm alive, that's what will be on this channel. No matter where I go in the future, what I do, this will be on the channel. So you guys, if you know anything, if you love these trucks, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.